Wednesday, February 6, 2013. And the first item that I have is the signing of the warrant.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. We do not have any meeting minutes to to present. The next item that we have is citizen participation. Not hearing anything, we'll move on. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to conduct interviews for the town administrator's position. We have 3 individuals scheduled for this evening. The first is Noel Bontempo, the second is John D'Agostino, and the third is William E. Kincaid, Jr. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. We had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening as well to continue the interviews, but because of a personal medical situation that I need to take care of, we've agreed to continue that to Tuesday, February 12th at 6 p.m., again in this room. So before we get started, I'll open it to the board for any business to take care of.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a disclosure. Richard Villani is one of the 6 finalists. His father and my mother were first cousins. Attorney Villani is therefore my second cousin. I have checked with town council and there is not a conflict of interest. Mr. Villani is not of my immediate family within the meaning of the law. I did, however, want to make a public disclosure of the nominal familial relationship so there would not be the perception of a conflict. My relationship with Richard Villani has always been more of an acquaintanceship. The nominal family relationship will not influence my decision-making process, and I have filed the disclosure document with the town clerk as of yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bill, do you have any items you'd like to take care of before we get started with the interviews?
I don't.
Okay. With that, we will welcome our first applicant, Noel Bontempo, lifelong Milford resident. And before we get started, Noel, we have your letter of intent to seek the application or present the application for the position of town administrator, along with your resume and transcript from the New England School of Law in Boston, and also your college records from BC, and your high school and disciplinary records at Milford. And in addition, we received 3 letters of recommendation. The first one is from John Bricado, Executive Director of the Advanced Math and Science Academy Charter School in Marlborough. The second one is from Robert Buckley, who serves as the Chairman of the Milford Conservation Commission. And the third is from the Reverend Richard Scioli of Sacred Heart. So we've all been presented with that, and as we indicated in the letter, we'd like these interviews to run about 45 minutes. If it's going to go a little longer than that, that's okay. And the first 5 or 10 minutes is simply for you as the applicant to discuss with us whatever you think you feel we should know. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions from the board. Okay? So we're going to get started with you, and I'll mark the clock right now at 6:10.
Thank you, Mr. Murray, and fellow members of the board, Mr. Buckley, Mr. DeBartolomeus. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I thank you for your consideration. As Chairman Murray indicated, I am a lifelong resident of Milford. I currently reside at 2 Quinchapog Road, which is down on Dilla Street. I'm right at the corner there. It's a cul-de-sac. The last neighborhood that I lived in, it was a dead end. It was down off of Water Street, but now I live in a cul-de-sac, so I'm kind of proud of that. I've been there for 5 years, roughly, and except for during my college career and early in my marriage, I've lived in Milford all of my life. I'm a product of Milford schools, the former Sacred Heart Elementary until the 7th grade, and then Milford Middle School and Milford High School. As you know from my resume, Boston College, New England School of Law. I reside at 2 Quinchapog Road with my wife Laura, and in Milford I have raised 6 children. My eldest is Katerina. She lives now with her husband on Purchase Street, and I'm a grandfather. Declan, which may come as a surprise to some of you, but given her last name is Kennedy now, that went along. I couldn't see Francesco Kennedy, you know, or Seamus Bontempo. So, you know, we have to preserve and honor our heritage. So, pardon me. My second child, Mateo, is a graduate of Regis College and currently looking for something full-time, as a lot of recent college graduates are doing. You know, that's just the nature of the beast these days. My daughter Sophia, who has just turned 20, is studying speech. Well, maybe she ought to give me a hand. Speech pathology at Springfield College out in Springfield, Massachusetts. My daughter Serafina is a 11th grader at Milford High School. My son Pietro is a freshman at Milford High School, and my daughter Lelia is a 2nd grader at Memorial School. As you know, I'm currently employed as a social studies department teacher at Milford High School, a position that I've held now for more than 9 years. Previous to that, I was a practice, well, I still am. I still, you know, great for the $300-odd charge. Yesterday I was at Marlborough District Court with the Milford High mock trial team. We're having a rebuilding year, so don't ask how we did, but you know, be able to walk through security just showing my bar card, kept my registration current. I practiced for 12 years, private practice in Boston, general practice, concentrating in a lot of administrative law, employment discrimination, that sort of thing. And at Milford High School, as I said, I've been there for 9 years. I teach government. That's been my focus. I've also taught, for instance, U.S. history, world history, military history, legal topics, but the bulk of my academic endeavors is in the field of government. And I also teach an AP course, which I'm sure those of you who are familiar with the AP standards, that's a college-level course for qualified students. They can get AP credits for it. I think it's been successful. I've been doing it now for 3 years up at Milford High School, and this is the 4th year that I think, or 4th or the 5th year that they've had the AP program in American government. And so that, I mean, I could say that I teach political science in that regard. And so I'm intimately familiar with the workings of government at the federal level, the theory behind it, the history, the state level, and the interaction with the local level. I'm also a longtime town meeting member, 3 different precincts because, obviously, of the rearrangement of the precincts over the years. There was a gap in the early years of this century where I didn't serve, but I served in the 1990s, and I've served since, I think, 2001, 2002. In roughly 2006, I was interested, and I sought appointment to the Conservation Commission. Members of this board decided to accept my serving on that board. That's been a fascinating experience for me, seeing the interaction of government interests, public interests, environmental interests, business interests, personal interests, because a lot of times we get homeowners, for instance, who are seeking either advice or relief. They want to build an addition on their home. They want to do landscaping, and it's been fascinating to participate, fascinating to learn about the intricacies of of that process. It's also been interesting to watch, I want to just say, sitting over there, when I do, on the Conservation Commission, over the period that I've served, I've seen the peaks and valleys of development. In 2006, 2007, those were pretty much boom years. There was a lot of housing going on, and then we ran into trouble, and I came onto the Conservation Commission at a time when they were moving from monthly meetings, and sometimes they couldn't even fill a quorum for those, to bi-monthly meetings, and we were just going flat out with 5, 6, 7, 8 issues on each night, and then of course it tapered off, and we went back to monthly meetings because simply the demand wasn't there. And so it was interesting and kind of disheartening to see that, the actual effect of the economic downturn on businesses and what people were able to do with their property. It was quite sobering in that regard. That has been an eye-opener for me. Town meeting has always been a great experience. I'm a great advocate of it. I love telling my students about my experiences in town meeting. Some of the stories that I used to hear about open town meetings from my grandfather, Tommy Davern. Someone once said, and I forget who it is, that the cure for the problems of democracy is more democracy. And we have that in ACES, with our system. And I think it's great that citizens participate, and I think that's one of the great strengths of Milford. And I was raised in an atmosphere that valued public service. And I think that many of you are aware of the contributions of my family to the town of Milford, and in my own small way, I would certainly like to pick up that mantle and carry it. I've tried to contribute along the way. I'm actively involved, not only in town government, as I've mentioned, but also, for instance, volunteering with the Boy Scouts of America, my local church. I do a lot of religious education work with them. I like to meet people. I like to communicate with them. Those are my fortes, I think, as an individual. I like to think that I am eloquent, that I can also be direct and concise. I can get a point across. I can gauge people. I'm sympathetic. I'm empathetic. I'm a good listener because I have to be. I have to listen to students. I have to listen to parents. I have to listen to my colleagues. I have to listen to my administrators. And so I think I've built up an arsenal of, maybe arsenal is not a good word, but a storehouse of tools that will serve me admirably in replacing Mr. Salazzi.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to open it up to the board now for
Certainly.
questions. Dean? would
Yes,
like to
thank you.
start?
Yep. Noel, how do you handle pressure? In your present job or just, whatever job? I think that's most important. There was something written, I think in Harvard Business Review a couple of months ago about pressure, and the success rate and all that is determined a lot of times. Pressure, whatever person does, but how do you handle pressure?
Pressure is usually an indication of a challenge. So I have to perform. That's how I handle pressure. is to take that energy and move it in a constructive direction to get something accomplished. I'm under pressure because I have to submit something, because I have to prepare a presentation, something like that. So I'm going to channel that energy to create or present the best model that I can. That's how I would answer your question. You know, the pressure is you're in a pressure situation because there's something that has to be done. So get it done.
Okay. At times, not often, we may be, the three of us or anybody, may be incorrect in our assessments and perceptions. So how would you deal with letting us know that we may have been incorrect or wrong information? How would you deal with that?
Well, I would hope that the information I was giving to you would be correct. So, first of all, minimize the opportunity for incorrect assessments or an incorrect judgment. I think, so proper preparation is critical. Maintaining lines of communication, opening new ones if that's necessary, sources of information. I like to think I'm the soul of discretion, and I'm certain that if I was in a position to counsel you, I would do so, obviously privately, and I think I would owe it to you to not be a sycophant and to tell you that, are you aware of the potential consequences of this? Have you thought down this road, or can you see in which direction this may go? Because I'm not saying your judgment's wrong, but you need to be ready. I think I would try to handle it as diplomatically as possible. I think I learned a lot going into the teaching profession as late as I did, a second career for me. And I watched some younger teachers get really upset when kids didn't do what they wanted, and because they took it as a personal challenge. And I don't think you can ever do that. So I'm sensitive to people's feelings. And so I'm not going to use a sledgehammer, to get my point across. I'm going to try to do it in the most diplomatic fashion that I possibly can, because it doesn't do you any good to make people feel bad or to bruise them. That's a shallow triumph.
What would you expect from the support staff? We have two very capable people in the office, plus other people who report to the administrator, veterans,
Well, I
town
have no,
engineer and all that. And, level of competence, independent judgment, actions. What would you want? What would you expect from these people as they come to you and report and you supervise them?
I would expect thoroughness and honesty from them, which is what I would hope to give to them. It's a two-way street. There has to be a level of respect between superiors and subordinates, and it flows. I would do the same to you. And then in return, that's what I would demand of them and assume that, or require from them.
I'm sure you've seen the meetings and the way we report back and forth.
Yes.
Things will take time for the person who obtains this job. But if there was one thing that you would try to change or make better right away, what would that be? Small thing or whatever.
I don't know that I could pick anything out, being outside looking in. What may seem at first blush to be superfluous may in fact be highly critical. You can't go in, I don't believe in that approach to make a splash. You know, I'd rather slip silently into the water than cannonball, and make a big wave. That's, and I don't think that's fair to the people who are used to doing things a certain way. I need to understand, what is the dynamic here? Why are things done this way? And I think in my personal beliefs, I have a great respect for tradition. You know? And people like a settled expectation. If I think it's necessary, first of all, I wouldn't act unilaterally. I would consult. You know, I would ask the members. I have an idea. You know, will this fly? What do you think of it? Because, like I said before, if I think you're doing something wrong, you know, I'm going to approach you and I'm going to put it as directly but diplomatically as I can and tell you. And I would seek you out if I feel a change is necessary or warranted, or I'm just curious about why something is done a certain way. I'm not going to be a bull in the china shop. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to inform myself.
Okay. Thanks, Noel. That's all for now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
It's a pleasure to meet you and
Thank
see
you.
you. You're well known to the community, and I'm glad you brought up in your opening your family's contribution to the community, because that's not insignificant. And so with local residents, certainly, you know, there's actually, you know, one could say that you've interviewed every day of your life. You know, I automatically give you credit having 6 children and the challenges that presents. That having 2, I couldn't imagine 6, but God bless you.
Thank you.
You talked a lot about personal attributes, and you listed a great deal of the ones that I would suggest that certainly I'm looking for, and I would guess the board is looking for. And there are, you know, documents here where people have attested to you having those, and so that's very helpful in walking in. But certainly, the route to a town administrator is unique, right? From going from law degree to and practicing to teaching to then administration. And I don't say that critically, because I'm not big on labels and titles and how people get there. You're clearly a bright individual that's articulate and thoughtful. But I'm looking to hear you maybe talk about some of those transferable skills that you bring with you that may be unique to your background, experience, and education that maybe somebody doesn't offer, who maybe has been in this position before.
Okay. In education now, the buzzword is 21st century skills. And sometimes those are referred to as soft skills. And, well, I'm here to blow my own horn, and I think I have them in abundance. Right? And that includes being able to administer, being able to lead, and often by example, being able to communicate effectively, written and orally, being able to analyze information, to synthesize it, to present it, to critically analyze it. And as a background as a lawyer, I was trained to do all of those things. I read, I write constantly. That's what I do with my time. And then I present it. And I self-critique myself all the time. How could I have done this better? Doing this in a classroom in front of highly energized teenagers who are readily distractible,
in some instances, you know, or it's like right after lunch, and they've loaded up with food, and it's like they've been hit with a rhino tranquilizer, and you're trying to get to them. So I've got to be able to present something that I did at 8 o'clock in the morning a little bit differently, or sometimes maybe a lot differently, and pace it differently at 12 o'clock in the afternoon with these kids. And, you know, I will think about what I said and how I can make it better, just as I'm going along. How can I get this point across? How can I convey this idea, make them understand it, and then present them? Yeah, I'm a great believer in the Socratic method, so I like to do that. So I'm constantly challenging not only them but myself to perform better. I hope that answers some of your question.
That helps me a great deal. I appreciate it. Appreciate your thoughtful response. You know, there are those that can say that being in Milford provides a little bit of a benefit in terms of the candidates being known to the board, or at least their families being known to the board. And you could also say that it represents a little bit more of a challenge, in that you're far more aware of the challenges that Milford faces on a day-to-day basis. You're probably more keenly aware and not have to Google research the types of things that have been big. As a town meeting member, you've certainly been a part of those. How is it that you see your background, skills, your personality helping us with some of the things, some of the challenges that you might see coming up? And I'd like to get into some of the specifics in the next, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months.
All right. I've thought about this question, and I think the greatest challenge for especially a local government is getting the right people, right? It's always going to be a personnel issue. And I mean not just here in Town Hall. I mean upstairs, in the seats, at town meeting, on the boards. We need the citizen participation. I go back once again. Any problem with democracy can be cured with more democracy, which means more people participating, and good people participating, and concerned people, and motivated people participating. If times are good and you have a good team, well, they're going to be even better. But when times get bad, what is going to prevent, or at the very least mitigate, problems is to have good people involved. I don't want to cast aspersions about area communities, but I was listening to the radio a couple of weeks ago, and it was a selectmen's meeting, and they were listing the vacancies on town boards and commissions, and it was appalling. We don't have that problem in Milford. You know, certainly don't have it on the Conservation Commission. You know? So how do you attract and retain people not only in the organs of government but in our little town legislature, which is the town meeting, and maintain that? And we've been blessed that way, I think, in Milford. So that's continually going to be a challenge, I think, and something that you know, I can help to support, because you know, people look to the top, you know. And if you've got a vibrant, active board of selectmen to lead and to provide an example, that's going to invigorate people, and they're going to want to participate. I think that's a critical element at any time, not just now, not just 12 months, not just 18 months. You need that human resource from the entire community, I think, to be successful.
And how would you help that participation? I guess my point is I want to link you and what you bring to the table to the challenges that we have in terms of participation, maybe and I'm following your theme, right? I don't have anything in mind myself, but
Yeah.
low voter turnout.
I'm trying to help that up at the high school. As soon as a kid turns 18, I give him a voter registration card and walk it down here myself.
But you're sitting in town administrator's seat now.
Yeah.
I've got you sitting there. We're talking about participation. I can think of a few other challenges as well that Milford is facing or will face in the next 18 months. But I'm trying to hear how you might help, what you might bring to solve, and maybe work with this board, because there isn't a lot that's individual, right, in terms of your efforts. But how would you help us navigate that?
Well, I think that communication and education are critically important. We need an informed electorate, and if there is a question about participation, then we should assist people in understanding why it's in their interest to be involved or to maintain their involvement. We can't sit on our laurels, in other words, and just expect things to continue as they are. So far, and from what I've been able to see and experience, we do a good job. We're not in the mess that some other communities find themselves in. So that momentum must be maintained, if not increased. As to specific tactics, I think it's too early for me to say, frankly.
Yeah, I raise it, and I repeated it actually because it was a theme that you had brought up, but it wasn't. I was just using the example. You know what, Mr. Chairman, those two questions help me understand a great deal, and I'll defer to you and give you opportunity, and then maybe we cycle back.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, definitely. We've got plenty of time.
Sure.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about some of the specifics of the position, the town administrator. As I'm sure you're aware, a large degree of responsibility is the overseeing and the maintenance of our public buildings. And, that's constantly a challenge, particularly when we have such a diverse group of buildings. The senior center,
Yes.
the police station. How do you view that role, and how would you handle that role?
Well, once again, communication and making myself present, I think, would be very important to that end. To let those who are in the buildings know that there is someone who is concerned and there, actually. I have some background in the building trades. I used to work construction, so I'm not uneducated as to what a roof consists of and how it's constructed, and so I have that particular knowledge. But I think that there's no replacing or no substitute for on-site inspection, discussing with people, is this place drafty? Have there been any problems? Have you encountered a situation, is something deteriorating? And then
I guess, the question I have is in terms of an administrator, someone who's going to be overseeing, this operation, and not so much actually performing repairs or that kind of stuff.
of course not, yeah.
What do you have in mind, or what would you foresee in terms of an organization, a schedule? Do you know what I'm saying? How would you coordinate the maintenance and also perhaps improvements of maybe energy concepts or renovations? How would you see that being organized and coordinated?
Well, I think
They're looking towards developing a process.
right, okay. That would require consultation with, for instance, professionals in the building department and the engineering department, and getting their input to develop, for instance, a schedule of reports on the status of buildings, and looking into areas I'm sure that someone's expertise could be brought into determining whether there's excessive consumption of energy by particular buildings, and looking into that, if there's red flags, for instance. So that would be something that could be done. Of course, it would require coordination and, once again, communication.
And would you see that happening on a ongoing, steady basis, or
Well, I think that's
periodic
necessary.
basis, or how
No.
would you incorporate that into your daily job?
Well, I don't think that it would be done daily. That would be a distraction from other things. But, you know, as a town meeting member and as a faculty member up at Milford High, you know, sometimes we've been caught by surprise with failures, right, of maintenance and upkeep. So, you know, I'm personally familiar with some of those issues. But this is going to depend on, you know, once again, the age of the building and its location. Would it be done on a monthly basis or a bi-yearly basis or a yearly basis? Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. You know, not being intimately familiar with all of the buildings. So in some buildings, it may be just a yearly one because they're newer. But then I'd have to talk to someone and say, well, what's the life expectancy on, for instance, the roof on this particular building? When do we need to start looking into this? When do we need to be concerned? So it's going to take gathering of information and analysis.
Another key role of the job is to recommend candidates to us to appoint for the various town positions, whether it's town accountant or town engineer or building inspector, but all of the numerous positions that the Board of Selectmen appoint. How would you go about that process?
Well, I would certainly ask for Mr. Solazzi's input on that. I would like to know how
Okay,
he
Mr.
has done.
Solazzi's gone, so how would you handle that process? Okay, he's off vacationing in Florida. You can't get a hold of him, so how would you, Noel Bontempo, handle that process?
Okay. I would, obviously, I would get your input. What do you want? What's the job description? You know, what sort of candidate are you looking for? You've got to be comfortable, too, with the people that you're going to be working for, or with, rather. So, you know, I would seek guidance, certainly from you, as to the process. How would you like me to handle it? Do you have, you know, always open for suggestion. But bottom line, obviously, you're looking for the most competent, talented person that you can obtain under the circumstances. I don't know how else to answer the question. You know, and I suppose it's, you know, it's going to depend on the nature of the position. It's going to be different if it's going to be hiring someone for a support or administrative position as opposed to a more executive function.
How would you envision the role of the town administrator in terms of the various committees that we have that might not even be under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, and ad hoc committees that come up for particular projects to, you know, build a school or to build another project? How do you see the town administrator's role in dealing with those different groups?
Well, if they're not under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, then obviously that's problematic. I would want to provide you with information on what they're doing, but the town administrator has to be respectful of the lines of authority, statutory and otherwise, that may be involved in that situation or in those situations. My job would be to work quietly, you know. I don't think that it does the board any good, you gentlemen, or these committees, commissions, and other boards to be subjected to public scrutiny because a scene has been made, as it were. I think it's very important to be delicate, shall we say, in carrying out these tasks. But the town administrator should have a firm grasp of what's going on, as far as possible, at all times, because you never know when an issue is going to come up, when I'm going to be asked, what is happening with this situation? How is progress being made here? At what point are they in their mandate? And I've got to be able, to answer that, or to get the answer really, really quickly. So I think that by necessity, the town administrator will be heavily involved with the functions of some boards and committees, and other ones, the town administrator should be should maintain, or be well informed, and be ready to advise the board if the board is curious or a situation arises.
Well, one of the projects that I'm interested in and looking forward to put forth this year is the expansion of the parking lot at Louisa Lake, and then also offering those 40-plus acres, the former consigli land, to a conservation land restriction, similar to what was done up at the land at Walden Woods. How is you, as town administrator, how could you help that project move forward?
Well, I know that obviously it's going to, what's going to be involved is this would be expand the parking lot, so proposals would have to be created. The project would be would have to be approved. The various town boards which have oversight over that, including the board that I currently sit on, because obviously it's in a water resource area. So all of that information would need to be gathered and presented, not only to you, but obviously, bless you, to the boards that would have jurisdiction over that. And then once that process, or as that process went along, and as far as, for instance, the parking lot, it was put out to bid, obviously that would have to be, oversight would have to be maintained on that, and the proper package, the proper documentation, organized, presented to the board so that they can make a decision about a responsible bidder under, I would imagine it's going to cost over $25,000, so Chapter 30B. And as far as the conservation land or the conservation usage, well, being in a butter, I'd be interested in that. But that would be something beneficial to the town of Milford, one of the last, open spaces in the town. My understanding was that the town obtained that land for use as passive recreation, and that's how it should be. That's how it should be used. And it's a gem as it is right now, with obviously the bike trail, which myself and my family use with a lot of frequency. So,
Okay. Dean, you have anything further?
Oh, well,
Go around
just
again?
one last,
sure.
what type of supervision would you want from us? How would, if there's anything you missed?
Whatever you're willing to give me. I mean,
What would you like, though? I mean, what would be very beneficial for you? Feedback or?
Well, no, I would ask for a lot of feedback, because with anyone, there's going to be a learning curve. Now, my learning curve may be flatter on some things, but it's going to be pitched more steeply on others. So I would request, and I would be very amenable to your active participation, especially early on. I mean, I think I'd be crazy to say that, oh, no, don't worry. I can do this by myself. Look, Ma, no hands. No, that would be ridiculous, and it would be arrogant of me. But on the other hand, you gentlemen are professionals. You have your own lives, and the task of the town administrator is to make your duties as the executive arm of the town of Milford, I think, as smooth as possible. So I would welcome a level of supervision, as I said, especially early on. I think that's
It's
critical.
always, no, that was a good response. It's always a learning situation, give and take. The closer, I work now with 4 administrators, and every situation has been different.
Sure.
But the closer we are, you're our eyes and ears, and, it's important to one, work with the chairman first, because it's the chairman's responsibility to set the agendas and what's coming up. But then they are the members, keeping the other members informed. But you mentioned education many times, communication, those are most important. And I think the tighter that bond is, I think the more successful, because we are a team.
Mhm.
And so it works both ways. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill, do you have anything you want to follow up on, or anything else?
No, I just want to provide a comment. This is incredibly hard, so I appreciate the time that you've spent with us tonight. I think you've done it very well. It's not an easy thing to be in front of press, be in front of members of the Board of Selectmen. This is not a room or a venue that's familiar to you, so I appreciate it. I'm happy to see that you're here, and I can only imagine how the kids are benefiting being in your classroom. So I just want to say thank you for coming in, and you were very at ease, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Noel, thank you. Did a wonderful job. We appreciate your time and everything that you submitted. And we're going to be moving on in the process. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, just to reiterate, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for, once again, a wonderful opportunity. I've learned a lot during this process. And regardless of your decision, I intend to continue my participation and continue to serve as best I can the people of Milford.
Great.
Thanks, Noel.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
All right, we have a little bit of time before the next one. I don't know if Mr. D'Agostino is here, and we're going to start him at 7. So I don't know if you want to take a little break or...
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you. We are back after our brief intermission, and the next candidate that we would interview would be Mr. John D'Agostino, and Mr. D'Agostino lives in Mansfield. Mr. D'Agostino, welcome to the town of Milford and the Board of Selectmen meeting. We received your correspondence indicating your intent to apply for the town administrator job in Milford. In addition, you provided us your resume, and we also have transcripts from Syracuse and University of Hartford, and we have reference information for you from Andrew Burbine, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Abington, Jack Pistorino, the Deputy Assessor from the town of Abington, Mike McHugh, a former selectman from Mansfield and town administrator of the town of Avon, as well as David McCarter, former member of the Board of Selectmen in Mansfield. So, Mr. D'Agostino, we're going to allow you to open up for 5 to 10 minutes and talk about whatever you'd like to talk about that you think might be pertinent to your application. And then after that, we'll open it up to the board members, and we'll have some questions and some dialogue.
Great.
Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. I think it's an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be here before you tonight. I have spent 31 years of my life in public service in various capacities in different types of positions along the way. I have 2 master's degrees, one from the University of Hartford, which is my public administration, American International College, and I graduated from Syracuse University. I have always dedicated my life to public service. I have served in no other capacity other than the field of public service. I started out at the State House back in the early 80s with Billy Bulger, who was the chairman of the Senate. I worked for Senator Alan Sisiski from Western Massachusetts. He was a strong advocate for consumer rights, and he was chairman of both the Insurance Committee and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. So he had 2 very powerful positions at the time. He had a well-staffed office, and I had the pleasure of serving in the capacity of constituency relations with Senator Sisiski. I spent most of my early career in Springfield, Massachusetts, a large city, municipal grants manager. I was involved with economic development and housing rehabilitation, and I actually ended up serving under Mayor Markle's administration as a police commissioner for the city of Springfield, as well as a municipal grants manager. From that point, I spent some time in Blackstone, neighboring Blackstone, not too far from here. Worked very well for a number of years with Aldo Chakey and Fred Hartnett over there. Great people. Had a wonderful school system they ran. They were top notch. I then moved on to Mansfield. Spent a little close to 12 years as a town manager there. And I am currently serving as town manager in the town of Abington. I am a results-oriented, creative, passionate type leader. If there are issues that need to be resolved, we can become, and I have also been very creative in the ways in which we have solved many of the public issues that faced any of the towns that I have worked in. In Blackstone, we put a pilot agreement together for American National Power, which paid the town approximately $52 million over 20 years, much needed revenue for a small town of about 6,000 to 8,000 residents. The tax rate went from $16 and change down to $9 in some odd sense because we introduced a manufacturing tax base that didn't exist prior to. We've had similar accomplishments I had in Mansfield, where I've attracted Samsonite Luggage. World headquarters is now located Mansfield Tyco Industries, which manufactures valves for the nuclear power industry. In Mansfield, I was able to use tax credits to keep Cape Cod Lumber, consolidate their operations. They had a facility in Mansfield. They vacated the facility in Mansfield and retained 92 positions and created 50 additional positions in the, or was it a total of 50? They retained 50 and added 25 or something. There was somewhere around 95 positions that were retained in at Cape Cod Lumber, who stayed in Abington rather than moving to Weymouth or another neighboring community. My strongest suit as a municipal leader is finances. Municipal finances is something that I pride myself with. We have balanced 19 municipal budgets. This will be the 20th in the years that I have worked in municipal government. In Abington, when I arrived, they had a negative free cash certification of $720,000. We wiped that clean. We had free cash certification of $1 million in one of my years and $748,000 in another year. They had $1,000 in stabilization. We have over $1 million today in stabilization. And I did that by financially managing the resources, putting in place for the first time an integrated municipal accounting software package that allowed the right hand to know what the left hand was doing, how much money was in each of the accounts. And before I had come, in all honesty, they had overreacted in the economic downturn that occurred with most communities, and I'm sure, you know, Milford didn't escape, you know, the economic downturn either. But they overreacted, and they eliminated positions that they didn't need to eliminate. Were able to consolidate those types of positions, in the sense that we're able to add additional employment positions for the school department that they had cut to the tune of about $400,000. We added a whole new shift of firefighters during the same time that we're putting money into stabilization, and that we're managing the resources in a more comprehensive and cohesive manner. I have a management style where I like to collaborate. I like to bring people into the decision-making process. Ultimately, in the form of government, obviously, it's up to the Board of Selectmen and hopefully the town administrator to make the most informed decisions possible that are going to move the community forward in a positive direction. My motto, what I live by as a public servant, is that whatever community I work for, I inherit what's in that community. And it's my responsibility, along with the Board of Selectmen and other public bodies, to make sure that what we inherit as public servants, we leave far better off than when we came. And so it's our responsibility to move government forward in a very positive manner, and in a way that allows the community and the residents involved in that community to participate in the decision-making process and get to a point where Milford is far better off under the leadership that would move forward under my direction or any other person's direction, whoever you choose, and to make this community a far better place to live and to raise a family in the future.
Good. Well, thank you. Let me turn it over to my colleagues. Dino?
Sure, Mr. D'Agostino.
Sure.
What do you expect to receive from this position if you were able to obtain it, compared to what you're doing now? I mean,
well, I think Milford is a very exciting community. It's a very diverse community. There are a tremendous amount of economic development opportunities, hopefully, for the community, to expand the tax base. If there is the ability to attract an industry or to attract businesses that employ a large number of people, that's what you'd want to do in Milford, because it becomes a more livable community when you live and work in the community that you reside in, more so than having to commute to Boston or commute up and down the 495 corridor. So I would look at trying to establish a strong economic development initiative, for the town. I see you have a very diverse base now of business and retail and commercial space. So I think you've got a good foundation, and I think it can be expanded upon in future years. And I look forward to working on those types of initiatives as well. I like to form partnerships. I'm very interested in working closely with the school department, because I look at government and its entities as we're all in this together. And if the school department or any of the departments fail, the town fails as a whole. And it's important to make sure that the school system is a good one and it has the resources it needs to continue its educational initiatives, but not at the expense of the town and the various departments within the town. And it requires a balance, and that balance requires dialogue and partnership between the superintendent and hopefully the town administrator.
If I may call you John.
Sure.
John, you've
I've been
said,
called worse.
You've said, you've said numerous times, either in the resume or your presentation, attracting industry. Just inform us, like, if you came to Milford and let's say there was 10 acres of industrial land, commercial, what's the process? How do you do that? We've been able to...
well, I think the first process is location and the infrastructure. Do you have the proper infrastructure in place? If you don't, there's grant monies available to get that kind of infrastructure in place so that you can develop that 10-acre parcel. Ideally, you'd want to make sure that if the 10-acre parcel is close to, the corridor, the 495 corridor, that's obviously a plus. So when you look at those types of parcels, you have to look at what infrastructure is available, what could be available, and how would you bring that infrastructure there without taxing tremendous taxation to to the community as a whole. And there are certain grant initiatives that are available at the state level to bring that kind of infrastructure to the area. What's your capacity for sewer? What is your capacity for water? What type of industry are you looking to attract? Are you looking to attract an industry that is a high water user? And if you are, do you have enough capacity within your current water flow to accommodate that type of initiative? And I'd look, like we did in Mansfield, we established a biotech overlay district. And biotech life science industries are very water intensive uses, but they're high paying. You're talking about head of household wage earning positions that I think are important. I think that when you make those analyses, you then decide how you're going to commit your resources to make that happen. And it's not something that's going to happen in a year. It's a 3 to 5 year process at best to get those types of, that type of community, or this type of community, prepared to accept and to have the resources necessary to compete. You're going to need tax incentives to bring these industries in as well. You want to make sure that Milford is rated sufficiently enough, either bronze or silver or gold, in relationship to biotech type communities. I was able to get Abington into the bronze level of acceptability for businesses of this kind to move into Abington. And Abington is a community that's far less in size, land size, population size, and it's in the middle of nowhere in the sense that it's stuck on 18 and 123 with no major connection to any type of roads, highway. However, Milford is uniquely, and I say that uniquely, situated geographically to capitalize on those types of initiatives. And I think it's important for the future of the community to make sure that you're growing the financial base so that you can provide additional services, or that you can, provide a first-class education to the students of Milford. Not saying that that's not happening now, but to be in a better position from a financial perspective to get to that next level.
John, you're certainly, well experienced. Let me give you a hypothetical example. We have $1 million in free cash. We have a town meeting in October.
Mm-hmm.
We have 4.5 million requests with the articles, right? So what process would you undertake? Who would you involve in determining how to best spend that $1 million? Working with the board, recommendations, how would you, the thought process, how would you do that?
Well, first of all, I think the initiatives of what's the board's mindset, I think is very important as to what your goals and objectives are. What do you want to achieve on behalf of Milford? What's important? Finance committee is also going to be very important in that, because I have never submitted a budget before town meeting that was not a consensus budget between the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and in my role now as town manager. And I think it's important that we show that kind of leadership role, because you want, the people want their officials on the same page. Not like Washington, where they're on pages that don't even exist sometimes. I think it's awful. And it shows a very weak leadership ability. And I think that once we decide where that money is going to be spent, and what are our goals, what are our objectives, and how are we going to achieve them, is the responsibility of what I would consider to be a team of financial advisors. From my perspective, I don't operate in a vacuum. I don't make decisions in a vacuum. And so what I involve would be the collector-treasurer, the town accountant, the financial components of government would be involved, from my perspective, in determining, along with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, how that money is going to be best spent. And if the goal is economic development, then maybe we set aside a certain amount of money for those, for that type of initiative. Because free cash, I look at that as something that should never, under any circumstances, supplement the operating budget of any community. Because what it does is it raises that amount of money, which is one-time revenue. What happens when it's not there next year? Who do you lay off if you're using it for reoccurring expenditures? So it's really an opportunity to get some, much-needed capital projects underway. When we had the $52 million in Blackstone, 90%, we established a fund, and 90% of that money went for capital projects, and 10% went for the operating budget, because in 25 years, if American National Power moves out, and you've used all that money to supplement your reoccurring expenditures, then you have a cliff, a funding cliff, that you're never going to meet without laying people off, including school teachers, and that's the last thing you want to do.
We have a power plant in town also.
Great.
Yeah. What's
Great.
your philosophy? What's your opinion on using monies to offset the tax rate?
If you have the ability to offset the tax rate, I would say that it would have to be a sufficient amount of money to make a difference in the tax rate. If you're shaving pennies off of the tax rate, is it better to use that to provide programs and services? Because the taxpayer is paying for services and programs. They're going to continue to pay for those programs and services. So, and it's a policy issue that the board has to grapple with as to whether or not we decide, or you decide, that you want to spend that money to reduce the tax rate by a couple of cents, if that's the case, or use it to invest in programs and services that the residents are paying taxes for to begin with. So if it's going to be a significant amount of money that's going to lower that that tax rate, then, that's an option. But you have to also consider next year, because it's the same pot of money. And next year, are you going to hit them with an increase because you can't, again, supplement a lower tax rate for them? And the one thing that industry does not like and businesses do not like are fluctuating tax rates that go up significantly, whether it's water, whether it's sewer, whether it's the actual tax rate itself. So from my perspective, it would be better for us to stabilize that tax rate so that the resident can rely on what that tax rate is going to be, and the incremental increase is not going to be significantly greater than 2.5% unless you've voted for operational overrides. And I haven't looked at your budget to any significant degree, but my recommendation would be to kind of stabilize the tax rate, have incremental tax increases that are not overburdensome, and at the same time provide the residents who pay taxes anyways with the services that they want. And that's, I would invest it in services, and I would invest it in the residents.
John, what about a situation where, not often, but sometimes we may have misperceptions or may not have all the information, or our thinking process may be skewed one way or the other. How would you work with us how would you correct the board members or provide information so that we could get back on track?
Well, first of all, I have an open door policy for anybody, whether it's a department head, a resident, member of the Board of Selectmen. If you hear something that's going on in the community, and usually you are the first to hear it, because you're elected by the people, and they're going to come to you. They're not going to come to the town manager or the town administrator or the tax collector. They're going to come to you. They elected you. And if there are issues, I can't anticipate everything that you're going to get for information, whether or not it's correct or incorrect. But it is my responsibility to provide you with the information that you need in order to make the most informed, best decision possible for Milford. That's my role, that's my responsibility. And therefore, I want to try to create a transparent process where the information that is available, not only to you, is also available to the residents so that they are making informed decisions as well. Because many times it's really an information gap issue that occurs between, the board, the town, and the residents. And of course, if you probably have a number of good coffee shops around town where most of that information becomes free-flowing. And I like visiting those places. I like sitting down, talking to the people, and providing them with the information so that they hopefully get the right information up front from somebody who knows what's going on, whether it's members of the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator. So I like being involved in the community because I think it's important to educate. My role is an educator, not only to the Board of Selectmen, to the various boards and committees, but to the townspeople as well, to make sure that the information that they have is accurate. Because if they don't have accurate information, the Lord only knows what type of decisions or conclusions they're going to draw, and that happens in any community. So it's important to try to stay ahead of that, provide the right information, the accurate information, and to work closely with members of the Board of Selectmen to make sure that you have that information, because you're the ambassadors to the town in the sense that if you have that information, you can say, oh, no, wait a minute, this is what the real deal is. And they're going to listen to you as selectmen before they're going to listen to me or anybody else. You're going to validate that, and it's important that you have that information. So
Sometimes, right? Right. No. How do you handle pressure? How do you deal with pressure, John?
how do I deal with pressure? In as even a keel manner as possible. I've been in the business long enough to realize that nothing ruffles, my feathers. I kind of thrive on pressure to some degree. I think it's important that you handle it in as incremental a manner as possible, that you always keep focused on what the goals and objectives are, and any decision that you make incrementally or on a larger scale is designed to achieve those goals and objectives. And so pressure from board members, the general public, is something that you work with and I strive on. Great example. We instituted a trash program that saved the town about $300,000. We went to an automated trash collection, single stream recycling. And it was decided that there were 5 condominiums that were involved in trash collection, but there's 20 condominiums in the town. Well, what happened to the rest of them? Why weren't they included? So we decided to make a policy decision that excluded them. Well, they came to a couple of meetings and were not obviously in favor of that move. I formed a little committee, a couple of members of the Board of Selectmen, myself, and the health agent and some staff people, and we met and we fashioned a program and implemented a program that was very similar to the same program that was implemented for the residents. You had a restriction on containers, you had a restriction on the amount that you could deposit in these containers for trash, and you had single stream recycling. But what the condos had were these huge dumpsters, and they were throwing away couches, and they were throwing away things that you couldn't, as a resident, throw away. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that everyone was going to be treated equitably. In a democracy, that's probably the most important characteristic. Everyone wants to be treated equitably. And so in order to do that, we were able to diffuse that whole issue and work out a solution that was very similar to the solution that was worked out for the 4,300 households in town. And so that program is really a model program. We reduced the container sizes, we increased the recycling size containers, and we have probably a 53% increase in recycling and about a 29% decrease in tonnage. And at $66 a ton, our old tonnage numbers were $80 a ton. We're saving a bundle of money. And it started out, I mean, if we did nothing and we just said, we're going to stick to our guns and we're going to do this because we think it's right, you would have created a political issue that you can't crawl out from under. So from my perspective, it was far better for us to work with the group, come up with a plan that was equitable and fair, and I'll tell you, those meetings were not pretty. When you talk about dogs and you talk about trash,
Oh, sure.
you're hitting
Some nerves,
emotional
yeah.
buttons
Right,
that create a tremendous amount of pressure.
right. Okay, John, thank you, John.
You definitely hit that nail on the head. Bill?
Then mess with the school system's bus and you hit the trifecta, the buses.
Dogs and trash.
Good to meet you. Appreciate you coming here. You at one point in a response to Dino had talked about your desire to stay close to the community, be in those coffee shops, talk with people, interact with people, residents of the community. And one of the challenges, obviously, when we look at the address on the resume, is how you balance that. You provide the work-life balance in commuting, in being at late meetings, and being at home with your family, because there's certainly that expectation as well, right? How do you accomplish that in a commuting fashion? I'm sure you've done it. You are doing it. So.
I every Thursday morning, I have coffee with a bunch of guys at the coffee shop in Martin's Bakery in Abington. Haven't missed it in 3 years. I'm involved in every parade. I'm involved in every ceremony. I am, in many respects, the face and the voice, to some degree, of the members of the Board of Selectmen. Whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday is part of the job. It's what I have to do. It's part of my makeup in many respects. I've done it for so many years. The commute is far less here than it is in Abington, because you can't get to Abington easy from anywhere in the state. Like I said, it's a landlocked town in many respects. So for me, it's important so that I have the knowledge that maybe you have in relationship to some of the scuttlebutt that's going on. What are people saying? Why are they saying it? What are the issues? And how can I get information out to them? In a website, in responses to them, phone calls, go to the house. I've done all of it, and it's important. I mean, I've even had meetings where where neighborhood residents got together and met in people's homes, and I'm at the house explaining why the town wants to do X, Y, or Z, and the reasons for it. And that's the type of dialogue where you get instant feedback as to whether or not that's going to be a great idea or not. And I've worked in charrettes where we tried to, in Mansfield, where we needed to build a train station. In 1952, they built a temporary train station that I finally replaced back in 2005. That was a temporary station. And the only way that we could do that was meeting with the residents that abutted that train station and sitting in their homes and going over how they wanted to see their neighborhood protected from this invasion of traffic. And once we were able to assure them of how we were going to do that, they bought into it, and they wanted the train station there. And, it has never gotten to the second and third phases. I've left that community, but those phases were very important, and we could have never brokered that deal because the Board of Selectmen and the community tried 7 separate times to build a new train station. And it wasn't until we had to design charrettes, people sitting down, people who were for the train station, who were against it, the stakeholders, the business community, the businesses in the downtown area, and they designed what they wanted, not only in the train station, but in the traffic pattern. And we're able to implement that. We're able to move that project forward.
And you understand the nature of the question, because I know you're as close to anybody, understanding it's not a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that.
Right, yeah. And I asked the question because it's actually out of sensitivity to your family and to the challenges that not being in a 9-to-5 or not even close to a 9-to-5 job. It's an incredibly difficult job. We talk about, and you listed some of those, but there are certainly night meetings, stakeholder meetings, constituent meetings. There are, whether they be parades, whether they be whatever activities might be involved on a Saturday or Sunday. I just wanted to get your response to that, and I think I did.
Do whatever it takes.
And that's what I heard in your response. Okay. One of the things that I had talked to the last person interviewing is the challenge being a local candidate versus being an out-of-town candidate. And I said, one of the burdens of a local candidate is they need to understand the issues. But one of the things I want to understand from somebody coming out of town looking at this position is the extent to which they understand the community that they're interviewing for, at least to the extent possible. And so that leads me to my question. What would you say would be the top 4 to 5 challenges that you see Milford facing in the next 12 to 18 months? At least, from what you've been able to gather and your understanding of the community thus far.
I think the next 18 months, I think for any community, whether it's Milford or anybody, let's assume we're talking about Milford and only Milford.
Yeah, I'm talking about uniquely Milford.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to gather an understanding of the depth of which you sought to understand Milford versus Mendon versus Hopedale versus Mansfield versus somebody else.
We all have challenges from a financial perspective, and I've indicated to you that from a financial perspective, that's my strongest suit. That's what I can bring to the table. and I can work a budget, I can find where the money is, I spent enough time doing it. I know that the fixed cost issues of pensions, which are rising, the fixed cost issues of healthcare, which I was able to trim $390,000 off of the healthcare budget in Abington. Those are fixed costs that are going to continue to rise. You also have an unfunded mandate to fund your retirees with respect to pension costs. There's an unfunded mandate that has to be fulfilled, and those are financial challenges that you're going to have to meet, not only in the next 18 months, in the next 5 to 10 years, to maintain a bond rating or to increase your bond rating. So from my perspective, the continuation of fixed costs that are rising in your budget are taking away that money that could be spent on programs and services that the taxpayers are paying for, that we talked about before. And we need to do it smart. We need to work smarter. We need to integrate technology better so that the flow of information is right at the level it needs to be for the individual to make an accurate decision, whether it's the Board of Selectmen or a department head. So information and how it's brokered and how it's shared and how it's provided is important to make sure that or the town as a whole is on the same page. So from my perspective, your financial challenges are going to be your rising costs for pensions, your rising costs for education, your rising costs for healthcare, and unless you have a plan in place to address those issues, they're going to continue to eat away at the budget, insignificant chunks of money.
Yeah, I guess, John, if you don't mind me calling you John,
No?
I was actually looking for, because your answer could have been given carbon copied to any community, right? I mean, fixed costs, unfunded liabilities as it relates to pensions, technology and communication. I'm trying to get a sense to the extent to which you have a handle on the challenges that Milford's facing. And
I can tell you what I think they are, but I could be completely, off base until you sit with members of the Board of Selectmen and sit with the community. And what I would do if I was selected is that I would meet with all of the stakeholder interest groups, the civic groups, the boards and committees, and I would find out, probably within 30 days, what the challenges and the issues are of this community, and I would put together a strategic plan to meet those objectives. It's not, if I was to tell you that the fixed costs are an issue, which they are in any community,
right,
you're absolutely correct. But to get to the level of understanding that I think you want me to respond to you with, I can't do that until I have had the ability to assess the situation, meet with the individuals, the stakeholders, understand what the issues are. And that's not a homegrown issue. That's an issue that any manager, whether they're from within the community or out of the community, has to do in order to then develop a strategic plan to meet those objectives and to find solutions. I'm a creative problem solver. There's not a problem that has crossed my desk that I haven't been able to resolve.
okay. If you had to list your top 3 skills, I've heard you talk about collaboration and bringing people together. At some point, you've got to get to a decision, right? Those decisions are not going to be always popular with everybody in the room.
Sure.
You're looking for consensus. You're not always going to get it, frankly.
Sure.
Can you think of a situation where you ran into that and where your skills, your unique skills that you possess, helped you navigate through those? Can you talk about specifics?
Oh, I can, yes, I can.
All right.
I'll give you 2 specifics.
All right.
The first specific was that I alluded to this whole issue with providing the schools with $400,000 in additional money at the fall town meeting that we had available. Now, I could have used that money and taken that money and hired a police officer, hired a firefighter, or hired a DPW worker, and spread that money out. But the school system, the high school, was in danger of losing accreditation. So my department heads were obviously not too happy with the decision. And I heard from all of them. We all sat down, we all went through the process, we vetted all of their needs. So I learned what their needs are far deeper than, you know, from one year to the next. But it was important for me to communicate to them that we're all in this together, that if the school department fails, the town fails. It's not just the fire department, police department, tax collector, in the various departments, police, fire, and whatever. It is the entire town. And it was an unpopular decision, but I'm a person, and they know this, that if I make a commitment and if I make a promise, I am going to make good on that promise. And so we took the $400,000, we gave it to the schools, they were able to regain their accreditation. And at the same time, next year, I was able to hire a shift of firefighters that opened up a closed fire station. We're in the process of hiring police officers. We've hired highway personnel. But I can't do it all at once, and it has to be done in a strategic planning process that gives everyone the ability and the understanding that their turn will come, and they'll get the money that we can provide them without bankrupting the town. We obviously don't want to do that. That was the first one. The second one was working with the police chief. And we needed to get a different percentage shift on healthcare. Get the police union to agree to that, but they wanted shift bid by seniority. They didn't have it. So the chief was able to say to Officer A, you're working midnight to 8, and next week you're going to work day shift, or you're going to work some. And those are life-changing decisions. But it gave the chief this incredible feeling of control, that he could control his resources and put his men where he needed them. The board and I wanted shift bid by seniority because we were going to, it wasn't going to cost us anything, but at the same time we were going to get a concession on health care that was important for all other unions. It took me about 5 months to convince him to do it.
Him being the chief?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we made that decision, and it was my decision. And I will live by any decision that I make for this community or any community.
All right. Thank you. The time is short, so, and I want to rob the chairman of his opportunity to ask some questions.
Thank you. Thank you. John, clearly you have a good insight into municipal budget. I see a real clear and organized thought process in terms of how you would tackle problems. What you talked about, you know, the team of financial officials is in fact something that we've been doing here for quite some time to come up with, I guess, what you referred to as the consensus budget. I think, you know what comes to me though, as I'm hearing you, and I look at your resume, I see that you're the town manager in Abington from 2010, and also town manager dating back to 1997 in Mansfield. The question I have is, our job as a town administrator, and it's dramatically different in the sense that you're not going to have the free rein and control and decision-making that you've been used to since 1997. You're not going to have the power to appoint. You're not going to have the power to settle collective bargaining agreements. You're not going to have the power to present a budget. How do you foresee your abilities fitting into the position that we have, where you have had such free rein and control for so long?
Well, that's an interesting question because while the charter may grant you those specific duties and responsibilities, you don't, from a political perspective, really have them. And I have never approached the decision-making process unilaterally. A town administrator's position can't do that. There's no unilateral decision ability. It has to be built upon consensus. It has to be built upon the understanding of a shared sense of decision-making and authority. And I have always, even though the position is town manager, and I have had the ability to do X, Y, and Z, I've always found it far better, from a decision-making perspective, to bring people into the decision-making process, because they own part of that decision.
I understand that, but ultimately, regardless of the decision, and I understand your process, and it's obviously a good one in terms of building consensus, consulting. You're going to have differences of opinion, and at some point, there's going to be the final word. Right now, you can make the final word. If you were to come to Milford, this board would make the final word. What happens when that final word is different than the final word that you would have put forth?
It's your final word. It's not mine. You see, this is not John D'Agostino's community. It's your community. You're hiring a professional manager to manage your resources and to manage your decision-making process to the best of his or her ability and in accordance to the charter. The charter are the rules of the game, or the bylaws. And I have to respect those, I have to live by those. That's my responsibility as a professional manager.
And would you feel fully comfortable and confident in going forth on a decision that this board may make that you might not have agreed with?
Oh, absolutely, and I've done it many times, even as a manager. And I can share with you an example. As a manager, I have the hiring authority in a particular matter, in a personnel matter. The board met in executive session, and they wanted to terminate a person's employment position. I was the hiring authority. I went to them because I wanted their buy-in in this process. And they voted unanimously to fire this individual. He ended up suing the town, suing me. And I ended up laying on the sword for the Board of Selectmen. That's my job. That's my responsibility. I don't see it any different than that. And I don't have an ego in the sense that my way is the right way and your way is the wrong way. There is no right or wrong way. And so if the decision is made where you feel that this is the way we should go, I have to respect that. I have to live by that, just like the residents of this community. It's your decision. Now, I'm going to provide you with all of the information that you need to make the most informed decision possible. That's my job. It's not to make the decision for you. That's your job.
Looking at some of the aspects of the town administrator job, one of them would be for you to oversee the department heads that are under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, whether it's the town engineer, town planner, or building inspector, and so forth. How would you, what kind of process would you have for that? How would you handle that on a daily basis and on a yearly basis? And how would you deal with problems that may arise in the various personnel departments?
Understanding the role that I represent, I'm your representative before, the various personnel that make up this town, and I supervise them. But ultimately, the final decision rests with each one of you, as far as the personnel decision goes. As I had indicated to you before, I have an open door policy. it's important for me to provide them with the information of how I think the board may respond to certain things. And that is based on our dynamic dialogue between us as professionals. But ultimately, the decision is your decision, whether you hire somebody or whether you don't. And it's my role and responsibility to give you the information you need to make the best decision possible. I served in a town administrator's role. That was my first position in Blackstone. That was.
I'm sorry.
You know, and so, and that position is very similar to the position you have here.
Is it your practice to have regular and periodic staff meetings, or
Oh, yeah.
how do you stay in contact? And let's pull one position. How would you stay in contact with the needs of the planning department, the town planner, for instance? How would you stay on top of what needs that individual may have?
Well, obviously, you're gonna, through the budget process, you're gonna have, it's your budget, it's not, you know, it's not the town manager, not the town manager's budget, it's a Board of Selectmen budget. So, and I represent you. So, you're gonna find out what the needs are within the various departments through the budget process. But again, I like staff meetings, and staff meetings are not myself talking to everybody, but everybody participating. There's, you know, we draw up agendas, and everyone has the ability to raise an issue, talk about whatever needs to be talked about, and information is shared, and that's important. If the town clerk has got something going on that everyone should know about, so that if somebody comes to the window and asks them, hey, what's going on with this particular thing that's in the town clerk, everyone knows what's going on. So it's important to have that brokering of information and sharing that information. So I use that opportunity to not only learn from the department head, but the department head hopefully would have a comfort level to come to me and say, hey, you know, this is what we need. This is what we need to do. And it's my responsibility to bring that back to you and to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do. What do you think? What's your decision? How do you want to see this happen?
And what have you found to be the most effective time frame in terms of staff meetings? Is this a monthly thing that you would do?
Well,
or do we do it?
It would definitely be monthly.
Okay.
Maybe at first, we'd have a couple of meetings early on. I would want to meet with all of the department heads individually to understand what their needs are, so that, and see, I look at my position, whether in the manager's role or in the administrator's role, as providing them with the resources that they need to be successful, because if they're not successful, the town isn't. So I have to, you know, work with them to the point where I support them to make them successful. Because if they're successful, the town is. The town achieves. And that's what our role is. That's what our responsibility is.
What was the attraction to the town of Milford? What brought you to the table tonight? What did you find? What do you find attractive about this job?
The size of the community, the diversity of the community, the ability to establish a long-term economic development plan that'll get this community with a stronger base of revenue, and an employment level that I think is important. That people live in the community that they work in, and work in the community that they live in. So for me, Milford has always been a community that, based on its size, its location, has a lot of resources that I think if you take somebody who's creative and has the ability to move this community forward, paint the vision and direction that's necessary, and get buy-in from the various boards and the Board of Selectmen, that we can do some exciting things in Milford. And you've done some. I mean, this isn't new. I mean, you're a great administrator for a lot of years here. Has done a marvelous job for this community.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just take another pass. Dean, would you like to follow up on anything?
When you say, John, you said location 3 or 4 times. Get into it. What do you mean location? Milford's location. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, you're in one of the largest corridors in the area. You have the availability of land. You need to develop a long-range economic development plan that is going to tap those resources that you have here now.
Is 495 important?
Well, 495 is extremely important, and the secondary roads leading to 495 are also important. It's a very important corridor. And there's a 495 economic development area that started years ago in Mansfield. We were one of the first communities to sign on to that, because 495 is the next phase of high-tech development. Land values are cheap, inexpensive in relationship to 128. And if you're looking at why is industry moving out of high-tech industry moving out of Cambridge? They don't have the land. And you know, you can set this whole corridor up to become a very important economic powerhouse, not only in Massachusetts, but for this area. And Milford should be the leader.
Tradition, great baseball. We also have a Nobel Prize winner from Milford in medicine. Matter of fact, it's the chairman's uncle, so that was pretty significant.
Oh, sure.
Doesn't happen every
well,
10 years, right?
The resources of the community are very important. Human resources are number one. And you have it, you know. You're close to the educational components as well. Worcester's not too far away.
All set? Yeah, Bill?
No, I think the questions I was going to ask have either been covered or I did ask them, so I appreciate it.
Great. John, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? We're coming to the close. Anything you'd like to say that you don't think we got out?
Well, no, I think that, you know, again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, to be here tonight. Like I said, I'm very humbled and pleased that I'm here. I think Milford is a phenomenal community. It's got a tremendous amount of potential, and it's up to the board to determine how that is going to play out. I would hope that you would look at individuals that have the years of experience that can put forth a comprehensive plan to move Milford strategically forward in the direction that you want it to go. I think there is a tremendous amount of potential here, and I'm excited about the opportunity. And I wish you the very best, and thank you for not only your service to the town, but for your leadership and for inviting me here tonight. I really appreciate that very much. So thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you.
We appreciated your interview. It was very impressive, and thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Have a safe trip home.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Good job, Tom. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Why don't we go back on? Okay, welcome. We are back again with our third candidate of the evening, Will Kincaid, who is a lifelong resident of Milford, lives at Woodridge Road. Will, welcome. Good
Thank you.
evening. We have your correspondence indicating your application for the position of town administrator. We also have your resume. We have various certificates that you've achieved in educational and professional basis. We have correspondence from the governor, Deval Patrick, congratulating you for a job well done. We have correspondence also from an individual named Will Marks. We have correspondence from Jonathan Davis, the acting general manager at looks like the MBTA. We have correspondence also, it looks like, from a customer at the MBTA, they think that had reference to Mr. Davis. We have letter of reference from Richard Davey, the Secretary and CEO of the Department of Transportation. We also have a letter of support from T.F. Scott Dowling III, who is Chief Counsel to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration at the U.S. Department of Transportation. We have a letter of reference from Joseph P. Kelly, Deputy Director of Statewide Tolling through the Mass Department of Transportation. And we have a letter of reference from Janice Ramsey, Director of Finance and Administration, Engineering and Maintenance Department through the Mass Department of Transportation. So as other candidates have done, we'll allow you the first 5 to 10 minutes to address us and talk to us about whatever you think is important that we should know about. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions and dialogue from the board.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I prepared a few words.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, Dino and Bill, for inviting me to interview for the position of Town Administrator. I've worked in state municipal government for the last 17 years. In addition, I have well over a decade of experience as a school committee member, Housing Authority Commissioner, and town meeting member. I currently serve on the Finance Committee and very much appreciate that appointment by this board. As a result of the position I hold at the MBTA, I have also served on the Mayor's Transportation Advisory Council in Boston, as well as a member of the Search Committee for the Transportation Director of the Boston Public Schools. In addition to my civic involvement, I'm very proud to be a member and the Secretary to the Board of FAMASA, Friends of the Milford Area Special Athletes, and a proud member of the Friends of the Milford Geriatric Authority. I'm currently the manager in the Revenue Department under the Treasurer Controller's Department. With that, I'm responsible for all revenue-related programs, such as the Semester Pass program, the Student Pass program, group sales, bulk sales, and all customer service-related issues. I am responsible for all credit and debit transactions and one of only 2 people within the 6,000-person organization that has access to that database and those records. I serve as the single point of contact for the Governor's Office, the Secretary of Transportation, the General Manager, and the legislative liaisons for both MassDOT and the MBTA for all fare collection and revenue-related issues for their constituents and our customers. I am confident that the numerous diverse issues that I deal with, along with my team on a daily basis, have trained me well for the demanding position of Town Administrator in Milford. I believe strongly in excellent customer service, as well as representing the people and the organization as a whole that I work. In addition to my 17 years of public service, I know that I will be a good match as Town Administrator because I am confident knowing who I am, where I'm from, and most importantly, who the people are in this town that we have each invested so much time and effort in over the years. I was born in Milford, grew up here, and have chosen to raise my family here. We live in a town where we really take care of one another. We may have our differences on occasion, and that's healthy. But when push comes to shove, we are there for each other, especially for our others' children and families. I've witnessed this throughout my lifetime in this town, from a child to a student, when I was a teacher at the Stacy School, a school committee member, and now as a parent of a 4-year-old with some complicated health and learning issues. The latter part is what my wife, Lisa, found the most amazing, and she quickly came to understand my commitment to the town of Milford. Now, as someone equally invested in the town of Milford, Lisa shares the commitment of her adopted community and the hometown of our son, Caleb. The position of Town Administrator provides me and my family the perfect balance of community service and my 17 years of public sector experience. I know that I am uniquely qualified. Having served both as an elected and appointed official and loving it, and knowing that if I do earn the appointment of this position from your board, Mr. Chairman, my future will be entirely different. Though quite different from continuing to seek elected office, I came to the conclusion that I can serve the town of Milford on a full-time basis as Town Administrator without sacrificing my commitment to our community. The most important characteristic that the successful candidate should have is being resourceful. The new town administrator is not going to be an expert in all aspects of municipal government. Even someone like me who has invested his entire career to public service is not going to have all the answers. However, what I hope may differentiate me from the other candidates is I will know where to go to get those correct answers. I have worked successfully with Chief O'Laughlin and Chief Toohey regarding school safety and on the generator project. I have worked closely with Town Council Jerry Moody on collective bargaining, negotiations, and grievances. I've worked with the town accountant, the town treasurer, the finance committee, the Board of Health, the Housing Authority, town clerk, the building commissioner, the superintendent, and the school department as a whole. I went to grade school with the animal control officer, have worked with the planning board, and I know the veterans agent. I will not require a roadmap to find my way around town government in order to get the answers that I will need to make my work and your goals successful. However, I do want to build and grow those relationships by respecting the department heads as managers, people, and for the professionals that they are and will continue to be. I'm a successful manager now because I do not isolate myself. I enjoy people, so I want to be with them. I want to understand how they work. I'm a good coach, a facilitator, and an organizer. I want to bring those skills to the role of town administrator. The department heads here in Milford are true professionals. They do not need someone to micromanage them. They need to respect the role of the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen that he or she will represent, and they already do. I want each of them to know and understand what the selectmen's expectations are, excuse me, and then for all of us to work together to see them through. From the Board of Selectmen to the building custodian and everyone in between, it has to be one team with one theme. The next town administrator needs to be cognizant of the successes of the past and the present in order to continue to succeed in the future. When town government comes together, including departments both inside and outside the selectmen's realm of responsibility, we have seen huge successes. We have seen this with the success of the Community Block Grant Program, the Neighborhood Task Force, the Trail Committee, the Milford Pond Committee, and most recently, the Milford Community Fields Project. The bottom line, the measure of success for the next town administrator will be how well they cooperate and collaborate with his or her direct reports, superiors, colleagues, and the elected officials that have responsibility to their own constituencies. Respect is paramount. The ability to get everyone around the same table when needed and to circle the wagons if a crisis arises. Another crucial aspect of the position will be communication. Direct and clear communication will need to continue to be a priority from the Board of Selectmen to the town administrator and from the administrator to department heads, independent boards, and committees. Also, knowing the limitations of this position further expresses the importance of respect and clear communication. Throughout my career as a manager in state government, I have adopted a holistic approach to managing. I get to know my colleagues and staff. What is happening outside of the office often affects what is happening in the office, regarding performance, attitude, and the level of concentration. The MBTA has 29 unions, and they are substantially different contracts for all of the labor force. There are rules to follow under the agreements compared to both the professional and executive employees. However, whether under a contract or not, people still need to be treated with respect, and clear and concise communication is so important. I have dealt with employees who didn't simply dislike one another, but actually caused dysfunction in the office because of the arguing and the tension. I faced the problem head on, and though it did have to result in disciplinary action and was very time-consuming for me, it resulted in a complete culture and climate change within the department. You have to utilize your resources you have, including your own strengths, but also your legal counsel and your union representatives. I describe myself as an expert generalist because I am the point person for human resources, labor relations, accounts payable and receivable, and materials. Over the years, I have undergone extensive training in ethics, conflict of interest, procurement, management techniques, anti-discrimination, and anti-harassment. Again, because of this experience, I believe that I am uniquely qualified for the position of town administrator. Looking ahead, we will continue to face rising insurance costs, unfunded pension liability, EPA stormwater management, and the Woodland Project. We will continue to face challenges, but this is an exciting time, and I, for one, am looking forward to the opportunity. I have a lot to offer you gentlemen as the Board of Selectmen, but also to the town of Milford as a whole, and I hope to prove that this evening. Again, thank you for the chance to interview, and I look forward to our discussion. Mr. Chairman?
Okay, thank you. Very good, Will. Dean?
Yeah. Very good, Will. With all that stuff and all that articulation, Will, and all the responsibilities, and how do you handle pressure? When you have many issues, and they're diverse and they're difficult, and they bring people together. How do you handle the pressure in order to get all that stuff done?
Well, I think first of all, you have to know the goal of both the people you're working for and your personal goals. And the bottom line is, not to oversimplify, but it's your job, you need to get it done. Results are the answer, that's what you're measured by. I think I deal with pressure like most. I mean, sometimes it can get to you, it can build up, but you have to turn that into, again, that positive result at the end that makes it worth it. I think people in government like yourselves will understand that when you're dealing with state representatives, high-ranking public officials, the governor's office, when they call, they don't want to be put into a queue. They don't expect to be put into a deli line. They expect their priority to be your priority, and that's exactly how it works. So priorities change throughout a single day, throughout an hour. But the bottom line is you get them done. You come in early, you leave late, and if you can make 90% of your constituency happy at the end of the day, then I think that's a result-oriented, example.
We don't make many mistakes, but every once in a while, we're a little bit off in our judgment, perceptions, and all that. So now, this is a team approach. If a particular board member or the board, all three of us, or future boards, we're going in the wrong direction. Our ideas are wrong, perceptions are wrong, thinking is off. How would you bring us back into focus? How would you delicately and sensitively say, your point of view is not accurate? What would you do to correct that situation?
Well, I think first of all, the person who's the next town administrator has to understand that all three of you have lives and have full-time careers outside of this. So if there is something that is going in a direction that I certainly don't feel comfortable with, then I think me handling it delicately or approaching people directly but delicately won't be a problem. But I think as soon as one of you members say, why is that? I have to have all my ducks lined up when I come to you with what I think is going wrong, because I certainly couldn't come to you with a half-hearted answer, or I can have a gut feeling and express that, but the bottom line is I need to be prepared to back up why this is going in the wrong direction, and hopefully prove my argument, even if the result is, well, my name's on a ballot, yours isn't, and this is the way we're going. And as long as I've been, I think, open and upfront and direct with you gentlemen, I would hope that that would be returned, and whatever the result is, I'm here to see your goals through.
Okay. As you know, you'll be supervising, 6 or 7 departments, officials, veterans, building commissioner, town planner, engineer, or whatever. How would you work with the department heads as far as supervision? What would you expect from them? Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, how I would envision it is simply that I'm coming in to an environment where most of your department heads, whether that changes in the future through attrition and retirement over the next decade or so, a lot of your folks are veterans. I think with that, I want to know, like I said in my opening remarks, I want to learn from them as much as I hope I can maybe show them some certain different things if the occasion arises. But I think there's going to be a level of respect. Again, I know most of them. I have a professional, or have had a professional relationship with most of them. Even if we've agreed or disagreed through those experiences, Town of Milford has really good people here. However it is that over the years that you folks have filled these positions with committed folks, they are, and they're professionals. I think the major goal is for me to be a coach, a facilitator, an organizer. I want them to get to a level of comfort with me that when I'm coming and talking to them, that I am representing the Board of Selectmen. So, and as I said, I think they already understand that. So this position, I think, will be, the person will be going to them knowing that they want to represent the board, and that your folks that you've hired over the years, want to represent you folks well. So I walk into this with a level of comfort that these professionals are doing what they should be doing already. With that, I want to learn as much about each of them as individuals as well as professionals again, to start with. And, you know, I would hope that they would be patient enough to want to show me and teach me where they are when a transition is made from Lewis to the new town administrator.
As I think we all know, Will, the present town administrator has done a very sound, excellent job. And I think that shows in the state of the community.
Mhm.
So if you were to obtain this position, what were some of the things, the objectives that you would try to do during the first month?
Well, I hope that there would be time that I would be able to overlap with Mr. Salazi, because all I've heard, even the 9 years I was on the school committee, was he was a coach, he was a facilitator, he was an organizer, he brought folks together, whether it was the public safety folks, the human services folks, or all of his department heads. I think that needs to continue. I certainly don't think anyone needs to come in here and fix things that aren't broken. But in order to get back to you after that first month and say, geez, this is what I've experienced, everyone's been terrific, these are things that maybe I've experienced in the past, that, you know, I may want to see. I mean, I would think that someone who's been in the position for X amount of time maybe doesn't need to maybe officially meet with all of his department heads on a weekly basis or every week and a half. But as a new person coming in, a rookie, as you said on the radio, I think those meetings, those getting together, even if everyone just gives a 2 to 3 minute synopsis every Friday on where they are, what they've experienced that week, where they are with the budget, especially as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, I think I would like to expect that.
Well, as far as are you more of a detail-oriented task person or a people person, or is it a combination?
Well, I hope it's a combination. My customer service skills, and again, I say that about anyone who walks in my office now. The 2 ladies I'm lucky enough out front in my office that work for me are excellent. They know that that's the bottom line. Before we even know if we can solve the problem, handle the problem, give a good answer, or give the answer that someone isn't going to like, that they're treated as a customer. I think that goes for all of our colleagues in this building, as well as all the taxpayers that walk through the door. I have a nice delivery, and I think I'm very personable. With that, you gentlemen are going to expect, I would hope, certain results that are going to, and certain priorities and things probably constantly changing on a regular basis. And whether that's through delegation, as well as those things that I need to do myself, I am very detail-oriented. I take great pride in the work that I have, and to be honest with you, I think that's why I'm in, even my current employment, I'm in a really good place, and I've made it through 5 or 6 administrations now. When I started in state government, I'm my only friend, I have no friends left that I started with. That's just, I mean, you're in government, you've seen changes. New commissioners, new governors, things change. I've always lasted and been promoted through the changes, and I'd like to think that has something to do with my performance.
And Will, as far as input and like the types of supervision from us, what would you like from us as far as feedback, input? So what type of supervision do you feel is necessary from us?
Well, not to answer you half-heartedly, you know, I think, if I can, I don't know if I will need the level of supervision that's going to interrupt your regular life through the day. But I hope to get as much as the 3 of you, even if it's independently, are willing to give to me through at least the first few months or a year. If you're hearing something that is less than desirable, I don't want to find out 3 months down the road. I'd like a call the minute someone leaves. And we can discuss it, and there's 2 sides to every story, if that's even the case, or if someone just wasn't happy with the answer that they got. But it's going to be very important for me to know where you 3 are as a board and independently as I begin this position, if I did.
Thanks, Will. That's all for now, Mr. Chairman. Yep.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that introduction, Will. I'm in a unique position here in that there have been already an out-of-town candidate, an in-town candidate, And with the in-town candidate I didn't have a personal relationship with, I can proudly say that, you know, I know your family, I know your wife, you know my family and wife, and we've interacted both personally and professionally. With that said, you know, I had talked with each of the prior candidates and wanted to gain a sense of their understanding, for example, an out-of-town candidate, their understanding of the community, what it is that they think our challenges are and how they might approach those. The next example I said is, you know, people out of town will think that an in-town candidate has an advantage. On the other hand, that in-town candidate should have a great understanding of the issues that we're going to face and that we're facing. And what I'd like to get a sense is what you think those issues are, maybe top three, and how your skills, your background, and your experience would help us with those, I guess.
So first, I mean, I guess the three major issues I hope I mentioned when it comes to what Milford as a whole is facing with unfunded pension liability, with stormwater management, the EPA regulations. I think the school coming down is going to be a very difficult, possibly a difficult thing for the town to wrestle with, because it's never going to be the only issue that's coming down the capital pipeline, and you have to weigh again what you can get done with that, what you can get done without that. But regardless of what the issues are, I think again the greatest characteristic that I have that I hope would be a major help is the fact that I have a good ability to deal with people on all levels of people as human beings, as people in government. I've been around long enough that I'm not calling a point of contact that takes calls from, you know, a legislative liaison or a contact that, you know, maybe I'll have to wait a couple of days for. I hope through the number of agencies I've worked for in the 17 years, I've developed friendships, both personal and professional, that I'm going to say, oh, we want to talk to someone, on the highway division. All right, you know who I'm going to start with? We have lunch together. We used to have lunch together. I think it's just my social skills. I think it's the people that I've been fortunate enough to meet and interact with over the years. I hope it's the way that if I am appointed, the way I interact with you three on an extremely different level than ever in the past. I hope that begins to answer that for you. Please follow up.
No, you actually did. You mentioned some of the challenges that we had, and I guess what I was trying to tie together is your unique skills, abilities, what you bring to the table, why you think those offer them. And I think you answered them in a large extent, especially when we talk about being able to get to people within the state or working with the department heads you already have experience with. I actually wanted to be fair in asking the same question to everybody, and there was, to a large extent, much of what you had covered, so I appreciate that. You know, each role is unique, right? You've served in a variety of positions, and you may have talked about some of the skills that may be transferable. I think we're talking about managing people and talking about pulling people together, but Milford has a unique structure, and it actually came out in prior interview, and it's an interesting way to bring it forward. Brian brought it up. In that you have an awful lot of, as town administrator, an awful lot of authority, or I'm sorry, an awful lot of responsibility, without the specific authority. And can you relate that to the type of work you're doing now and how you might address navigating through that minefield? Because, you know,
Sure.
it's not a town manager position, it's a town administrator position.
Absolutely, and actually that was a call that I placed to Town Council Jerry Moody just last week, because that was I read the bylaws, but I wanted to actually get his opinion on it, and say, I was a town meeting member when the title and the responsibility was changed and things of that nature, and he gave me actually an excellent refresher course on that, and that's where I began thinking about that, and that's why even in my opening remarks I discussed very briefly the limitations of the position. You need to know them. You need to know them simply because this is where your other abilities need to come through. We may have to go talk to the Paul Mazzucchelli at the Department of Health here, and talk to the board members. They certainly don't fall under the purview of the Board of Selectmen, but they're important in town. I mean, we deal with them, as I talk about, whether it's the task force or dealing with property that's been abandoned. I mean, all of these different departments still have to work together. If the Parks Department wants to build a new field, there's a cost that affects the town as a whole. The Parks Department may not come under the realm of responsibility under the Board of Selectmen, but there still needs to be communication there. They still need to feel that if I call, that one, I hope I get a call back, that we can meet, that we can talk. I can explain to them what my concerns are, what your concerns are, or where we can help and come together and actually get another positive result down the road. So again, I think I go back to interpersonal skills, which are very important. I think getting people together, knowing that people are going to want to come in and be willing to sit down with you, especially when you start a new position. And I think most would, simply because I already have a relationship with a lot of these folks, and not political and not anything other than personal. We see each other at the post office. We interact. Our children go to school together. It's that type of thing that actually can generate a lot of positive results to begin with. If I was to be this position, I have a lot to prove to folks. Because up until this point, all I've done is prove that I can get enough votes on a ballot to get elected to the school committee. This is the first, and actually that was very nerve-wracking, because this is the first time I'm letting folks in town into my other life, that's where the two have never interacted. So that's why it was important during my opening remarks to just give a little bit of a glimpse and hope that if it ends up with positive results and I end up working with Lewis and getting every little bit of knowledge from him prior to his exit, that I end up, quite honestly, doing all right and making you folks proud, because the end results are going to make what's best for Milford happen.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, as I looked over your material and I listened to you talk, you speak very deferentially about the various department heads and employees, and I know that obviously you know most, if not all of them, and you have relationships with these people, and one of the roles of this job is you're going to have to be a supervisor.
Yes.
Not a friend.
Nope.
Not a coach exclusively. I mean, that could be a part of it, but ultimately it's a supervisor. So explain to me how you would be able to supervise those individuals if you found one of those individuals was not doing the job that you think should be done. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, and actually, that's a great question, because I certainly didn't want to come across that way. I just didn't want to present myself and undermine or misrepresent any folks that I've worked with in the past. But I don't want there to be any confusion, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate you asking that, because that's one thing I don't want to walk away from. I have been supervising people since I was 22 years old. 3 weeks out of college, it was baptism by fire. And it was a tough road then. It is not tough now. The final decisions can be tough because you're affecting people and their positions and their families and things like that. And I always want to keep that in the back of my mind. But if someone's not doing what's right for the taxpayer, for the town of Milford, and quite honestly, not representing you three the right way, there isn't going to be a problem with either disciplinary action, which unfortunately I do have experience with. I wish I didn't, quite honestly, but I do. And I can't afford to be made to look a certain way, and it certainly can't reflect on this board. So I'm not sure if I can say it any more confidently than that without sounding arrogant, which I don't want to do.
No, I'm not looking for anything like that, but what I'm trying to get is your thoughts on the process going forward. And I guess even the supposition that, you know, a department head is not doing something right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what do we base that on? You know, going back towards a preventative type situation,
Sure.
what would your management style be in terms of dealing with these particular department heads?
Sure. Well, I think initially it begins with, ideally, I start the job. I start individually meeting with them, because I do, as their supervisor now, I can respect the work they've done that I've seen in the past in my other roles. But now going forward, I need to know where they are now, meaning what they're working on, what their day-to-day looks like, what their weekly operation looks like, what the goals are, what the goals and evaluations have been set forth by the former town administrator. Because again, coming in a March timeframe or so, you know, I have to at least respect the fact that they're working in the way they have up until that point. So I don't consider myself a micromanager, but at the same time I'm going to contradict myself, because when you start a new position, that's exactly what you're doing. You're getting to know what each one of your folks that you're responsible for are doing, and quite honestly, even what their staff is doing. Not to go over their heads or supersede them in any fashion, but just so you can understand what actually is taking place in each office. Because of the relationships I have, I only have them from positions I've had in the past. So I know I'm coming into a different role, but I really want to use the first few months to learn what's going on, what's happening, and how we interact. I mean, it's not going to take long, human beings being what they are, to know if, you know, are we starting off well? You know, I'm not questioning anyone's ability. I'm asking what's going on because I'm responsible. Because at any one time, you could ask me, what's going on in the general counsel's office? What's happening in the veterans agent's office? I heard this. Where are we with that?
So do you envision regular individual meetings or staff meetings?
Both,
Or
actually.
how do you access that information?
Well, I think, as I said in my opening remarks, that especially at the very beginning of a cycle, and that may last forever. I don't have weekly staff meetings anymore, but I have bi-weekly, and they're a big help.
Is that what you would envision having at this job?
Well, initially, I mean, again, if I start the job, you know, April 1st, March 1st, whatever you folks decide, I would like to start meeting with the people that I'm responsible for immediately. You know, in the first few days, and then on a weekly basis, and go from there. I think everything has to take a life of its own on, because I have to be comfortable to know that, okay, a couple of weeks can go by now. You know, it's 3 years into the position, and I don't want to have a meeting just to meet, because I think that's sometimes what they turn into. And I've been part of that bureaucracy, and they're necessary. And then other times, your own folks end up saying, well, you know, it only lasted 12 minutes this week. We all went around the table. We gave a synopsis of our budget. Do you think, at least until we get to the end of the fiscal year, we can meet for, you know, every other week? And I think feedback like that's important. So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking, but not being here, not experiencing it, not catching up with each one of them, not having an informal presentation of where they are so that I can come up to speed on everything. Because I think, quite honestly, that, you know, that's a challenge in itself.
So now, if you have an individual that's under your supervision, whether it's a department head or someone else, and you have the feeling that that individual is not working up to standard or maybe not performing like you expected, take me through that process. How do you deal with that step by step?
Okay, well, how I've handled it,
This
sure.
This is a person that you know in the community,
Mm-hmm.
that you're friendly with, not someone that you might work with in Boston or something like that. How would
that's
you
fair.
How would you envision working through that process?
Okay. I think either way, whether it's a department head or someone else on staff, and for this example, if we talk about someone that works on staff for a department head, I think, first of all, you have to start with the department head. First of all, that's only fair, and being a middle manager, you have to give that middle manager that level of respect, obviously, to start with. This is someone that's a problem, or not showing up to work on time, or leaving early, whatever the issue is, that has to be established. And I need to hear from the department head, because there are times where the department head will say things are fine. That's been my experience in the past. A department head could say, yeah, this has been a problem, but we just haven't been able to remedy it. And I think if that's the answer, then the department head and I have to immediately start working together to address it, regardless of how uncomfortable the conversation is, or if it's a union employee, according to the contract, and bring in the union rep or the steward, because the process needs to start. If this is the way it's been for 2 years, then 2 years is a problem, but I'm coming in now, so I'm now responsible for it the minute I walk through the door. We had an initiative at the MBTA and all through MassDOT where, as managers, doesn't sound like much, but we were required to wear a pin that says, but that's how we've always done it, with the line through it. This was a huge initiative of Secretary Davies, and first you get a pin, you don't think much about it, but it was a culture change, and it's been a good one, because I think, especially in government at all levels, you hear that a lot. So with that little caveat, I think we deal with it, because sooner or later, if that's not dealt with, then the department head is responsible and is going to have to deal with that and be on the receiving end of negative feedback and evaluations and things of that nature. And if that doesn't get dealt with, well, then I'm now on the receiving end of negative evaluations and you three being quite disappointed. And that's not going to happen. Sooner or later, personal ownership has to come into this at all levels, but the buck stops with someone, and it's going to obviously stop where it's supposed to, which is at the top. So,
okay. Let me, ask you a couple of questions, just going through the job description of the town administrator. One of the aspects of the job is to oversee and facilitate various capital projects, whether it's something that the town administrator is doing on his own, whether the painting of town hall, or an ancillary project for the community field committee or the senior center building committee. Take me through the process that you would put in place to facilitate that kind of a project.
Okay. I guess I'll first start by, we recently, at the last project that, in a work environment that I've been on, we had a...
Sounds like someone's working right now.
We had 3 customer service centers throughout the property at the MBTA. 2 for our disabled folks, and 1 for our customers that didn't need physical assistance. A group of us were asked to get together and say, well, how has this been fair all of these years? You send the folks that don't need physical assistance to Downtown Crossing, and you send those with disabilities to Back Bay and to another auxiliary site, excuse me. And when the 8 of us were put together by the general manager to say, build me a new center, and I want one-stop shopping, whether someone's disabled or able-bodied, they should not be segregated at that point. And he was right. And at the point, in this day and age, that was crazy. We got it done, and I know things work differently here. But why I tell that is because the major obstacle was obviously getting funds, getting the budget folks, the treasury folks, and the general manager's office all on the same page to figure out what are they sacrificing to get that capital project done, because that just became the priority. How we worked through that was, obviously, sacrifices were made at a level slightly higher than me, but once we got the go-ahead and we got the money in the bank, so to speak, we found a site. Preliminarily, it was on our own property. A lot of work had to be done, but we had to go out to, obviously, the bid process, which was quite extensive because it had a cost of $2.5 million, and going over wasn't an option. We were told not to come back for more money or there'd be a problem. I think on a smaller scale on some aspects, but actually larger on other aspects, is the town of Milford, where you're dealing with the Board of Selectmen, town meeting, the Finance Committee, the Capital Improvement Committee. You have to go through all of these stages to hopefully, as we talked about, get everyone on the same page, bring everyone together, express that this is now a priority, whether it's from the Board of Selectmen or it's from the Parks Department. And with that, you now have to manage it. So I guess, how do we manage it? We manage it by making sure that everyone who has to be involved in the decision-making, from sending out the bid, accepting a proposal, tracking the budget, working with the town accountant and the treasurer. And again, I don't mean to be repetitive, but I think no matter what the project is, how large, how small, it has to be a team effort. That's how things, or at least how I perceive things to be in Milford now. I hope that that would continue. I'm not sure if that, I don't mean to make it all puppies and flowers, because it's not. It's hard work. I deal with hard work now. This is going to be hard work. This is a challenging role. But again, it comes to getting everyone together. I'm not an accountant, but we have accountants. I'm not an attorney, but we have a town council. So I think it just depends on, again, relying on everyone, getting everyone together.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I'm just basically trying to draw out a thought process,
okay,
and an identification of issues. One of the things that, and you may be aware of what's going on right now, and I really kind of consider it kind of growing pains that the town is going through,
okay,
is on the technology side.
Yes.
And we recently got a number of reports from different department heads about the use of technology throughout the town, and I would call it decentralized.
Okay.
You know, what the police department is doing is really different than what the library's doing, than what the school department's doing, than what town hall is doing. That's going on right now.
Okay.
And if you or whoever gets this job, this issue is going to hit the new town administrator smack in the face.
Okay.
And what would your approach be on this particular issue?
Okay.
And we've talked about it at our recent meetings, which I'm sure you've been aware of. And I'm sure you're aware that the technology individual is part through the school department and the municipal side. But really right now, we have a lot of different things going on in the town of Milford on the technology end, and it's not clear that it's integrated in the most efficient fashion. So now, if you're the new town administrator and this board, in its wisdom, collectively says, look, Will, we think we got an issue here, work it.
Okay.
How do you approach that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think bringing in someone, as you guys did, was a start, and it was a good start, because even before, and I don't know the new gentleman, but I worked with the former IT director. I think first of all, it starts with a conversation with him, but it's also, I mean, if this was a company or again, I go back to my experience most recently at the MBTA, far more employees, but you folks, this is still a decent-sized company when you look at all of the personnel you have, faculty, staff, then you have town hall and all of the other town groups. I mean, in order to centralize it, without saying, the answer is to come in and just spend more money, but the technology, that in the end, it's probably going to be somewhat of reality if the gentleman needs a staff. I know there are certain paraprofessionals within the school system.
And I'm not looking for an answer on that issue, but I'm trying to draw out what your approach might be to tackle that issue.
Well, again, I think the first, and I certainly don't mean to oversimplify it, but first of all, I would want to first obviously have a conversation with the head of IT. He's Lewis, I think. I haven't met the gentleman. Lou? Len, I'm sorry. And first, since you folks did hire him, I would like to know, where he is up to this point. And he probably, I imagine, has concerns and hopefully he has answers, whether he's brought them to the surface yet or you've even had a chance to address them yet in its entirety, then I think I start with that. And then I hope that whatever him and I discuss at some point, if it's whether the right thing to do is to come back to you folks with a recommendation for you to ponder, go over, and say, how did you come to this? Well, we came to it because this is who we talked to. Should we bring a third party in? Is there something that this gentleman should be doing or could be doing on top of trying to do the day-to-day? Because it's got to be a tough position. It's a tough position because, again, there's a lot of technology in this town. And for it to be decentralized is a shame. So I guess, again, generally speaking, it would have to start with him as the department head, simply out of respect, and that's the right thing to do. And then once him and I are on the same page, and I can hopefully do some of my own research, whether how minimal or large it ends up being, come back and say, look, we found the answers.
So would you basically then start and more or less stop with the director?
No, but I think I would want to know from you is find out.
Okay, so from us, we would say, we don't know anything about technology.
Okay.
All we know is we've gotten these various reports.
Okay.
So you've talked to the director, you've got an assessment from him,
Mm-hmm.
Which you may or may not agree with, and where do you go from there?
Well, I think from there we have to come up with answers. Because again, like I said in an earlier question, I can't come to you with a problem you already know. So where do I get those answers from? I get those answers from either other people that are in the industry, and where I would hope Len would know where to go to get those answers as well. And I keep putting it on him, not to take it away from me, because in the end, you put that to me, so I'm responsible for it. But I do want to utilize him because he's here. He's here, he's working for the town of Milford, he's drawing a paycheck. I imagine he wants to be productive. That's what I'm starting with. So I think from there, that's where you go and you follow through. Now you follow through by talking to the school system. That's a huge area. What is getting done, what isn't getting done? Is it because is the daily support getting done because they have 4 or 5 folks, bodies, between high school students and a couple of paraprofessional staff members that can run around and do that? Because a lot of it is fingertip maintenance. If it's fingertip maintenance, we know what that accounts to. That accounts to bodies and people being there, whether it's a couple hours a day or full-time, whatever it is. If it's back-end, needing new technology, well, that's, I mean, you get up, regular companies are getting upgrades every 3 to 5 years. You're doing that because people are coming in who install this stuff. Len isn't going to be the one to put in probably new servers to support the entire town. I mean, within just public safety alone, those servers are massive. Then you get to the schools and then town hall. So again, unless I'm leaving something specific out, we have to start with him. We have to research, and within a reasonable amount of time. Because again, if I'm getting that thrown at me, you may not have the answer I'd ask you, but I would just say, what's your timetable on this, boss? Because I'll make it.
Okay.
I'll meet the deadline.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Dean?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Very nice job.
Okay, great.
Bill? You all set?
I don't have anything further. Agree. Nice job.
Well, if I can.
Will, is
sorry.
there anything else that you would like to tell us before we close? We still got 5 minutes on the clock, so.
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity. I was actually very excited, so thank you for that. What I did, I know we were asked to supply letters, but what I want to do is also offer you a list of additional references if you want to make phone calls.
Sure.
I like to just show I'm transparent, and these are all folks that I've worked with in the past, or personal friends
Thank you.
in government that can vouch for my job performance. And
Thank you,
they're
Will.
more than happy to hear from you. A couple of them don't.
For the
Put up the bus. All right.
For the book.
All right.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You did a
Thank you,
wonderful
Will.
job, and it was good to hear you communicate after we drew you out a little bit, got you away from the printed page, and really got a feeling for where you're at.
Well, I've
So-
never done that before, but I thought I didn't want to leave anything out. I feel like I was coming before a Senate Tim.
Thank you.
But I'm glad there was a table. Thank you.
It's gotta be incredibly hard. We were just talking
I
about
don't
that
think we've
earlier.
ever been called that before.
I know, huh?
It has
We've
to
been
be
called a lot of
incredibly hard.
things.
Ambassadors, whatever.
We
Thanks,
haven't been
Will.
called that.
Thank you.
All right. I think that concludes our meeting for tonight. We don't have any other business to take care of.
Good.
We'll entertain a motion
Tired.
to adjourn.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Good night. Our next meeting will be Monday,
Monday, yeah.
February 11th.